Hey guys, this is Tyler here. I'm here in Estonia, of course, and I would just talk about the current state of Estonia here and other countries in Central and Eastern Europe, and just some of the problems I see at the moment. And firstly, here in Estonia, there's not a lot of foreign people in the country at the moment. A lot of people may already know this, but like a lot of these folks cannot travel here, whether they're from outside the EU, they're from other countries. I don't know for certain if the EU has any restrictions, but many people, including now people from UK, cannot travel to Estonia. And also note that UK had one of the largest numbers of tourists and people who lived in Estonia of any European country. And it's just really telling of where the nation is at the moment in the near future. I've spoken about Estonia, and just it's unbelievable, honestly, when I look at this country and just the decline. And even in the past year and a half that I've been here, I've spoken to people about this, and I don't want to sound too much like I'm complaining and too negative, too pessimistic, but I will note that I got here very late. This was very late stage. I mean, this country, the time to come was in the 90s or early 2000s. After that, you were a bit late in the game. I mean, there's other countries like Belarus that would be much better options that would have comparative situations of Estonia in the 1990s. As each month, each year goes by, I just see this. I first came here in 2017 to visit, and if I saw what I saw presently in 2017, there's no way that I would have came to live here. And when I did come here, like in 2019 in the summertime, many people may know this, it was right after I break up with my ex-girlfriend at the time over in Russia in St. Petersburg. And I really didn't know how long I was going to be here. In fact, I thought that I may only be here for a few months and then I would move on. And for that reason, I actually rented an apartment that was cheap, and it was not like the most central part of Tallinn, because I just thought it would be kind of a few month deal and I would leave or something. And I actually ended up staying longer. That was in 2019. Those 5 or 6 months were pretty smooth sailing, and there was a lot of fun events to go to. There was a lot of fun things to do. Everything was open. There wasn't this whole pandemic situation. And it's incredible the number of foreign people, like late summer of 2019 compared to now, whether it was tourists, students, long-term residents, people like on business visas like my brother. It was so many more people. A lot of people even on business visas have left the country, even if they could stay longer for a variety of reasons. They may need income. They may just be very tired of living here. They may be a family or situation of this nature. There's many reasons. So you go to parts of the city here in Tallinn, in the capital, like in the north part, you encounter very few foreign people outside of the Ukrainian, Russians. Outside of those particular groups, you won't encounter a lot of foreigners, especially of like European origin. You may encounter some from like Africa or Middle East or something, but not really hardly anyone from European countries or European origin. It's becoming less and less common as each month goes by. And I think it's very indicative of also where the country's at. It's became, quite frankly, very unpleasant to live. It had really fun elements. Even if I think back like a year and a half ago, before pandemic, they had all these like free events here. They of course, all the establishments and stuff were open. It was just open. I mean, you didn't have to worry about wearing a mask everywhere, and just the level of pessimism has just gone up so much. Obviously, I've spoken also the female leadership. They had their president, now they have prime minister who's also a woman. You can see the influence over the whole country it's having. It's driving the overall mood and just the tendency. Yeah, if you go into Tallinn and you'll see massive construction projects going on. There's lots of construction. That's one industry that doesn't shut down at all during any situation, pandemic. But I look at all the construction, and also note here, disclaimer, I myself prefer older construction, older buildings. The place where I live, my apartment is over 120 years old, or at least over 100. It's pre-Soviet. I like old buildings, old places. That's just my taste. I love classical architecture, classical edifices, and anything of classical era really appeals to me. In fact, when I was younger, one of my professions I was looking at was being an architect. That kind of shows how much I was into this kind of area. So I myself prefer like older buildings. But you see like all the new construction projects going up, and for me, I actually don't like to see this. I like seeing older buildings. For more people, they probably like seeing all this new infrastructure, new construction. They would see it as a cool thing. But for me, I prefer the old. I prefer classic. And it also, I think, is very reminiscent of where the country is going. And just all the old elements of this country are like erasing by the month, by the year. And I think some of the elements were pretty cool. There were some bright spots. Yeah, some very bad and negative things, and also I think a lot of this newer construction, newer architecture is pretty high priced. Some of it is certainly overpriced. And I wonder how they are going to rent out all this space, how they're going to have enough buyers in its commercial space, or how are they going to have enough business companies here? They have a population decline in Estonia, and I've spoken about, I have acquaintances and friends had recent breakups here, and these were very solid relationships on the surface. And these guys were with their girlfriend for a long time, and then they just broke up. And some of these guys plan on getting married. These were Estonians, and I don't see how, with all the measures, they're very restrictive of foreign people coming into the country. A lot of EU people don't even desire to come here to live, maybe just to travel if they can. And it's very unclear how the border situation here is from month to month. And I don't see how they're going to have all the head, so to speak, to fill all the real estate, the commercial real estate, home real estate. It would seem impossible to me from just what I know, but maybe they have potential buyers, or they already have buyers. The country's just making a move into a new era. And if you prefer more the classical, more the old school, whether it's like architecture, feel, prices, ambience, there's better Eastern European, Balkan, Central European countries to choose from. I don't know specifically how it is like in Slovakia or Czech Republic, but I know like here, it's changing very rapidly. And I know that like some of the Estonian guys I've spoken about, they're getting ready to leave. Some of these guys are moving to Southeast Asia, Latin America, Mexico. They are getting ready to leave themselves. They've gotten really fed up with it. I imagine too, with all the female leadership in place, this is going to just have more and more influence and just make it more undesirable for guys to live here. And what they've done for many years now, and they continue to do, is just prop up public sector government, just make it bigger, make their salaries bigger. They don't have the private infrastructure to counterweight it or counterbalance it, and that's why there's no question other tax rates are probably going to go up with that, and they're going to need to raise it. And sometimes I wonder what is the difference between what they're currently doing now to the Soviet era. It sometimes is quite similar. I think this model there's just a lot of problems with, and furthermore it's unsustainable. And like I mentioned before, you don't have the population, the people. How are you going to sustain this system? You don't like the smarter Estonian people. They're not having children. They're not having any like kids or anything. And unlike in Canada or the U.S., they're very restrictive with immigrants here for the most part. So they don't allow a lot of immigrants here, and those kids aren't being born. There's no question there's going to be a continual population decline and just there's not going to be enough revenue coming through the country, and the older population will just continue to increase as years go by. And these are all aspects you have to consider when you move to a country. And like I said, if you look at a country, like if it's for transitory purposes, if it's temporary situation, like in my case it was temporary situation, actually, that's fine. But you have to know when it's time to move on, to go somewhere where you just feel like it's a better spot long term, because you invest not just money, it's time into the country. You may be better off putting that residency time into a country you actually want to obtain a visa or obtain a passport for long-term purposes. It may not be worth it. I'm not saying that my situation here in Estonia is similar to everyone. People have different cases here. Everyone has different life. If someone has like a lot of immediate family and they're very close to them, they have a girlfriend or wife, I'm sure it's a lot different. And also some other like car and whatnot. But for a lot of people, like foreigners, that's not the case. I would think that there's many foreigners that probably feel less enthusiastic about being here than before. And this is for a variety of reasons. I mean, like I said before, for foreigners, they used to they were able to sell the country. They'd have a lot of public events that were free. They'd have something called hackathon, and they'd have all these establishments open all night, and just, it was fun. I mean, there was so much nightlife going on once it got warmer out, or even when it was colder. And none of those selling points are here. None of those fun selling points. Every other thing is a freaking webinar. It's a webinar. Webinars can help. They can serve purpose in professional areas, professional development, in some business areas. But don't tell me that if a webinar that can replace having face-to-face interaction, meeting with buddies, having some drinks, or meeting gals, or doing whatever in person, in face-to-face environments, going to events in person. That's what Estonia used to have. None of this stuff. It's all webinars. And it's so stupid. It's so lame. This is something that I ask people now. I said, really, do you think webinar, is that really fun? Like when you look at like, take more fun social environments and make it into a webinar, do you really like that? Is that fun? Especially if you're a single person, you don't have a girlfriend or wife, or vice versa, husband or spouse. It's not the same. It's totally different. And you can't really have real meaningful face-to-face interaction that way. And even you guys, my subscriber base, if I can meet you guys, like if we're in the same country or in Estonia, or when I go down to Serbia to live, to the Balkans, I'd gladly meet you guys in person. Meet you guys through video. Either way is fine with me. I much prefer meeting face to face, so I think it's much more pleasant and it's real human contact. Really, I would like to think some of this is gonna be temporary, that maybe things will be restored in a year or so. At this point, I honestly don't know. I have my doubts. I think they've used this to completely transition certain countries like this one. Some countries will go back to their old models. I think Texas is on a great path right now. Montana, those are great states, I think, to be in right now. They're making some really quick changes. I think they have good government there in that sense. And I hope other like European countries here in the European Union follow that. They take some of that and put it into action. But like I said, going back, there's a lot of foreign people not here. I would say it's probably 10% of what it was, say, 2 years ago that are in Estonia. If you're actually if you're into game, I don't encourage gaming, like day game, night game. This would actually probably be a little better now because there's not a huge number of foreign guys here, and most of the guys here are already married or have girlfriends or are just not into that type of thing. But it's not to say you may or may not get dates. I can't speak on that matter. I do also think that if you live somewhere and you have experiences, especially negative experiences, you know what to look for in the future, moving on out, like in the next country. that you end up living long term, you know exactly what to look for and what really appeals to you. And that's the key here. If you pick the wrong country, initial country, it's fine. Just figure out like what's a better option and move on. What you don't want to do is just totally burn yourself out of a country and then have to go back to your home country. And you may go back and then after a few months get really tired of that and then want to leave again. If you're like in the same continent, probably more convenient if you can go from the country you're living in to the other country that's closer by. And it's kind of what I found. And also, many people have different theories, and they don't talk about this here in Estonia.